McCarthy as Speaker of the House. Right now, half the number that we think is there have voted to remove him. One more would cinch it. But again, there is some confusion. Let's listen in.
The yeas are 216. The nays are 210. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The office of Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives is hereby declared vacant.
All right, that is a stunner. You have never seen what you see unfolding now in the well of the House in American history.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live right now as the House is ripped in two into chaos because of the Republican uniparty rhinos and their inability to listen to Republican voters for not 1 year, not 2 years, but for my entire life. We have been ruled by a Republican Party that lies to you and to your face and then goes to Washington, D.C. and betrays you, backstabs you, and are effectively just Democrat light. They're just Democrats of like a few years ago. The Republican leadership inside of Washington, D.C. is broken. Matt Gaetz has now effectively led a revolt, a revolution against our leadership in Washington, D.C., starting with Kevin McCarthy. And Kevin McCarthy, ladies and gentlemen, is now on a platter. His speakership is over. Kevin McCarthy was ousted from his speakership seconds ago. Seconds ago. In a vote where 7 Republicans cast votes against his speakerships. Correction, 8 Republicans cast votes against his speakership. McCarthy has now been removed as the Speaker of the House. The House is once again without a speaker. All Democrats voted to oust McCarthy. So that's what you get. Play dumb games, win dumb prizes. Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin McCarthy is out as Speaker of the House. This is Kevin McCarthy wearing a Ukraine flag pocket square. This was over Ukraine funding. It is the first time in American history that a Speaker of the House has been ousted. How did this all work? Here's the breaking news from Fox News, and we have our full production team online right now, who are clipping and covering everything that is happening live right now, monitoring what is happening live right now. We have multiple feeds that we are monitoring, and we will bring you Matt Gaetz, who just is about to speak on the Capitol steps after Matt Gaetz's bombshell, barn burner, flamethrower, molten lava speeches from the well of the House as he successfully leads a revolution against Kevin McCarthy and the Uniparty. House votes to remove Kevin McCarthy as Speaker in historic first. Votes by Democrats and GOP rebels, led by Matt Gaetz, combined to oust McCarthy. Now, this has been brewing for a long time. You'll remember that Matt Gaetz refused to vote for McCarthy as leader, and that Kevin McCarthy, along with the RNC, refused to actually win enough seats that it wouldn't matter. Matt Gaetz was only ever going to be able to get a couple people, and it didn't matter if Republicans had a 20-seat majority. It would be irrelevant. But Republicans sucked at their job, didn't win, didn't fight hard enough in the midterms, and of course were utterly backstabbed by the cabal in Washington, D.C., Ronna McDaniel being chiefly among them, Mitch McConnell as well. Mitch McConnell takes money from Sam Bankman-Fried in order to fund anti-Trump candidates. Washington, D.C. hates you, and it's about time that we shock the system. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the shock to the system. What happened here was that Kevin McCarthy, who only has a 6-seat majority, needed to not have Republicans break. But they broke. 8 Republicans voted against his speakership, and that was enough. Ken Buck among them, Eli Crane, Matt Gaetz, Nancy Mace, which was shocking. Nobody was counting on that. And then all Democrats. And so that was enough to say, Kevin McCarthy, you're out. And that's how it works, ladies and gentlemen. So let's read the breaking news. Lawmakers have voted to oust Kevin McCarthy from his leadership role for the first time in history. 8 Republicans voted with every Democrat to vacate the Speaker's chair, 216 to 210, in favor of McCarthy's ouster. Gaetz introduced the measure known as a motion to vacate on Monday, accusing him of breaking his promises he made to when he won the Speaker's gavel. Tensions flared during the hours of debate during the actual motion to vacate after 11 Republicans voted with every Democrat to advance the measure. Chaos is Speaker McCarthy. Chaos is somebody who we cannot trust with their word, Gaetz says. Gaetz said that McCarthy lied to them. Now, Matt Gaetz is speaking on the Capitol steps, ladies and gentlemen. Matt Gaetz is speaking live on the Capitol steps, and we are going to cut to that. There is a large gaggle of reporters. We're going to take you, Matt Gaetz. Again, we will show you what Matt Gaetz did inside of the well of the Capitol. But ladies and gentlemen, let's hear from the man of the hour, because there's an enormous amount of uncertainty about what happens next.
If not McCarthy, then...
Paralyzed the House of Representatives today. To whose benefit? People have called you a narcissist. People say that is to your benefit alone. Is it to the benefit of you and to Donald Trump?
It's the benefit of this country that we have a better Speaker of the House than Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy couldn't keep his word. He made an agreement in January regarding the way Washington would work, and he violated that agreement. We are $33 trillion in debt. We are facing $2.2 trillion annual deficits. We face a de-dollarization globally that will crush Americans, working class Americans. Kevin McCarthy is a feature of the swamp. He has risen to power by collecting special interest money and redistributing that money in exchange for favors. We are breaking the fever now, and we should elect a speaker who's better.
So if not Kevin McCarthy, then who? Then who?
You said last night that Steve Scalise was a name that you floated to potentially be speaker. Where do things stand right now? If not McCarthy, then who?
Well, the stages of grief, I think, are in progress right now with some of my colleagues. I think there was a stage of denial, and I've certainly experienced a good amount of their anger, and now we appear to be headed toward bargaining. I think the world of Steve Scalise. I think he'd make a phenomenal speaker.
We've got less than 45.
I'm afraid of $33 trillion in debt crushing the working people in my district. I'm afraid of the dollar losing its status as the global reserve currency. If they want to expel me, let me know when they have the vote.
We've got less than 45 days left before we've got less than 45 days left before you have to pass a budget, which is something that you've been wanting to do. Doesn't this just completely paralyze the House? I mean, we could see 15 more rounds.
I don't think we will. I think Kevin McCarthy should take a hint. After 15 ballots to become Speaker, after 8 months of a failed speakership, and after removal in this historic manner, I think we should move on and find somebody else. What's paralyzed the House of Representatives has been the failure of Speaker McCarthy. What paralyzed the House of Representatives was not taking up appropriations bills. We left for a 6-week vacation while the appropriations process hung in the balance. And because I forced these people to take a few votes, you think I'm paralyzing the House of Representatives? I think the House of Representatives has been paralyzed for the last several decades as we've refused to pass a budget and as we've governed by continuing resolution and omnibus bill. So I think that this represents the ripping off of the Band-Aid, and that's what we need to do to get back on track.
How do you pass anything if 200 Republicans? How do you pass anything?
What do you say to your colleagues who argue you don't have another name right now? You don't have someone else who could get 218 votes. What do you tell those colleagues?
Well, I would tell them that for certain, Kevin McCarthy can't get 218 votes, so let's try the next person.
How do you pass something with
pro tem, obviously?
There would have to be a real meeting of the minds there.
Congressman Gaetz, how do you pass something if there's 200 Republicans?
Somebody else has another question.
Are you going to ask for a guarantee from whoever is floated as a candidate for the next speaker for them to actually move the appropriations process along in a speed that satisfies you?
Yes.
Congressman, at this
So
point,
will you be putting yourself forward for the speakership?
Absolutely not. I have no desire to be Speaker of the House.
Really?
Congressman, with all due respect, how do you pass something if you don't have 200 Republicans behind you?
I know we've already asked about names, but what about Emmer and others?
I think the world of Tom Emmer. He'd make a great speaker.
Congressman, have you spoken with any of these? Have you spoken with Scalise? Have you spoken with Emmer?
I've spoken with him, but I'll probably keep our conversations between us.
Congressman, you take the speaker.
Ben, what was going through your head when the vote gaveled down and it was official McCarthy wasn't Speaker?
We got to move to the next step. You know, we are not at the end of this process, okay? At most, we're approaching halftime. We've got to be able to assemble a governing coalition We have to build from a place of trust. The reason Kevin McCarthy went down today is because nobody trusts Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy has made multiple contradictory promises, and when they all came due, he lost votes of people who maybe don't even ideologically agree with me on everything. Take, for example, my colleague from South Carolina, Ms. Mace. She has different views than I do on a variety of subjects, but what we had in common, Kevin McCarthy lied to all of us.
Congressman, hold on a second. You're saying that nobody trusts Kevin McCarthy, but you're talking about, including yourself, about 7 Republicans compared to about 200 and about, some odd Republicans who actually do trust him. So can you kind of explain that here?
Well, as it turns out, getting 200 Republicans to trust you isn't enough to stay Speaker.
Compared to 7 Republicans.
At this point, have you spoken to former President Trump about this since the ousting? Was he supportive of what you were doing?
I have spoken to President Trump over the last several days. The ousting only occurred several minutes ago, so we haven't spoken during that time.
President Trump, though, put on Truth Social that he didn't think this was a good idea. He didn't want to see Republicans fighting with other Republicans. How do you respond to the former president?
I would say that my conversations with the former president leave me with great confidence that I'm doing the right thing.
Did the former president call you today? Did the former president call you today?
Who are concerned about the future of the conservative agenda and the House GOP.
I would say that the conservative agenda was being paralyzed by Speaker McCarthy. We hadn't even sent a subpoena to Hunter Biden. Our oversight was lackluster. Our spending priorities were misaligned. The top-line budget was going to lead to more inflation, more debt, more challenges. So the best way to advance the conservative agenda is to move forward with a new speaker.
What is the end game?
Are you going to require that any future speaker elected allows the motion to vacate to stay at a one-person threshold?
Yes.
Congressman Gaetz, would you support?
Considering that Steve Scalise votes in line with Speaker McCarthy most of the time, why should he want the job after this just happened?
Well, that's a question for him, I guess, not me.
He said he's uninterested. He's already said he's
I haven't heard him say that.
No, he's already.
What has he said to you?
Well, here's what I would say. Here's what I say. I think a lot of members are going to reflect on their thinking after this historic moment. I think anything that people have said before the McCarthy ouster is probably bearing less weight than the way people may be thinking about these questions after the McCarthy ouster.
What is the end game?
Comments about Steve Scalise yesterday and today. Will you yourself nominate Steve Scalise for Speaker of the House?
Maybe. I want to hear from him. I mean, I'm not here to make a judgment on where Mr. Scalise stands with his rehabilitation and recovery. I would give him the deference to be able to decide whether or not he'd like to put himself forward as a candidate. But he'd be the type of person that I could see myself supporting.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end. That is the end of our clip of Matt Gaetz on the steps. Producer ALX, make sure that we got everything from Matt Gaetz on the steps. They mentioned Donald Trump. Here is Donald Trump on Truth Social. Let's make this large so that the people can read it. Rolls-Royce. Why is that Republicans are always fighting amongst themselves? Why aren't they fighting radical left Democrats who are destroying our country? So Donald Trump very cautiously saying that he is potentially not in favor of this. What do you think? Blow up the comment section. Matt Gaetz making a very strong argument there against Kevin McCarthy, saying that Nancy Mace, who's a big Kevin McCarthy backer, voted with him to oust Kevin McCarthy. Well, what does that mean? That means that Kevin McCarthy's a liar. Kevin McCarthy lied about the way he's going to pass spending bills, lied about fighting the national debt, lied about the border, lied about getting serious and fighting Joe Biden. And as we have seen, our leadership in Washington, D.C. for Republicans is so feckless that we have Mitch McConnell hugging Joe Biden. You know that those images exist, right? Mitch McConnell actually embracing Joe Biden and they hugged each other. Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Gaetz is getting a massive amount of play online right now for his speech against Kevin McCarthy in the well of the House moments ago. Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Gaetz was making the point that Washington, D.C. is broken, that the Republican Party in D.C. is broken, that we are headed towards de-dollarization around the world, and we are headed towards fiscal collapse. We are headed towards a broken nation with no future, $33 trillion in debt. And so why not fight now? Why not throw down the gauntlet right now? Here is a clip of Matt Gaetz from the well of the House floor where he was booed by the Republican side of the aisle. You are witnessing history right now.
It is astonishing to hear any colleague give Speaker McCarthy credit for moving on to the single subject appropriations bills. As you heard my colleague, Mr. Biggs, say, that was never the plan from Speaker McCarthy. The week before we moved on to those single subject appropriations bills, the plan was another CR. He pitched a CR. They tried to get us to vote for a CR, and only when a brave few said we are done governing by continuing resolution, we are here to eulogize the era of continuing resolution, we will not do it, we will not pass it. These bills can go, the spending may rise and fall as the years pass, but the notion that we're going to lump in the Department of Education and the Department of Labor with our military and our troops and our Border Patrol is fundamentally unserious, and I would suggest chaotic. We cannot do that. It was only because we forced that to happen. And by the way, if we continue with Speaker McCarthy, the appropriations process will go right back to what he wanted it to go back to. Just a sideshow, just a puppet show, just something to keep the hamsters on the hamster wheel as they continue to back people up against a calendar, centralize power with the lobbyists and special interests that move all kind of money through the leadership. And then that's how they get their way, and that's why the American people have been getting screwed decade after decade, and I'm not going to tolerate it anymore without a fight.
Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Gaetz going in. Matt Gaetz going in. McCarthy has been defeated. 8 Republicans in total voted against Kevin McCarthy, and the internet is exploding right now. Thermonuclear speeches from the House floor. This one, possibly the most viral of Matt Gaetz's speeches on the House floor, saying he doesn't care if Republicans boo him, he is going to stand against the uniparty.
And when it comes to how those raise money, I take no lecture on asking patriotic Americans to weigh in and contribute to this fight from those who would grovel and bend knee for the lobbyists and special interests who own our leadership, who have boo all you want, who have hollowed out this town and have borrowed against the future of our future generations. I'll be happy to fund my political operation through the work of hardworking Americans, $10 and $20 and $30 at a time, and you all keep showing up at the lobbyist fundraisers and see how that goes for you. I reserve.
Yep. All right, ladies and gentlemen, breaking news right here. Everything is going to be hot off the presses. Hot off the presses. Kevin McCarthy ally Patrick McHenry is named temporary speaker. House and Republicans in complete turmoil. Kevin McCarthy on Tuesday became the first speaker in House history to be voted out, removed. Republicans, led by Matt Gaetz, led a rebellion against McCarthy. Patrick McHenry of North Carolina, a Republican and ally McCarthy's, had been named as a temporary speaker. Now the House will begin another voting process. Another voting process for speaker here. Wild. Wild. He will be tasked with leading the factious House through the next few days. His role is one of the most powerful posts in Congress. The House Speaker is also second in line succession to the presidency after the vice president. So, of course, now the government shutdown looks like we had an extension for 45 days. What will happen? Are we finally sick of the way that Washington has been run? I will tell you this. I am very excited to see someone do something. I'm very excited to see somebody finally stand up and say, we shouldn't do it this way anymore. We cannot continue to print dollars. We cannot continue to service debt. $33 trillion in debt. When does the madness stop? Money for Ukraine, but no money for homeless veterans here in America. Money for Ukraine's borders, but no money for our border. When does the madness stop? Ladies and gentlemen, the House floors were absolute and total fire, as was this very interesting moment. What you saw there is Ilhan Omar, of all people, licking her lips at Matt Gaetz and saying, whoa, whoa. This is one of the more viral clips that's happening right now. Ilhan Omar staring at Matt Gaetz and licking her lips. You know what? What do you want from me? This is the internet. This is what the internet is talking about. Okay? Wood. Ilhan Omar. Love her Some white boy. Panic Kevin McCarthy looks for fire alarm. That is what the Babylon Bee is going with. Ladies and gentlemen, again, memes made. Here's the... My team is telling me I have to play this. Here's the lick counter of Ilhan Omar staring at Matt Gaetz like he's a fattened Christmas ham.
The signal is for $33 trillion in debt, facing $2.2 trillion annual deficits. And our fellow Americans may be watching, wondering, how does that happen? How does the greatest country in the world have a process so...
Yep. High anxiety here in the House right now. I don't know exactly who this is. I think this is a potentially like the House parliamentarian, but somebody just hit the gavel so hard in the House that it effectively broke. I've never seen this happen before. This may be the House parliamentarian. ALX, tell me if I'm wrong here, but somebody smashed a gavel so hard right now on the floor of the House that they snapped it. Watch.
And conferences to meet and discuss the path forward. Accordingly, pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess subject to the call of the Chair.
Wow. Yikes. Okay. People are pissed. People are pissed inside of the House. There are a number of people that are already doing polls about this. Kash Patel is one of them. On Truth Social, Kash Patel, friend of our show. Who would you like as speaker? Some people probably wishing they could pull fire alarms right now. Devin Nunes is up here with 65%. Emmer, Pelosi, Schiff, Scalise. Devin Nunes, of course, runs Truth Social. But you don't have to be a member of the House. You do not have to be a member of the House to become Speaker of the House. How are Republicans dealing with this? Well, there's a Republican, quote-unquote, senator from Texas, John Cornyn, who's done literally zero for the border, who loves the fact that Texas is being invaded and that his state is is being flipped blue via invasion and via conquest. John Cornyn can't say a single thing about the Venezuelans who planted a flag on Texas soil claiming it for Venezuela, you may recall. But John Cornyn says that Republicans are terrorists. Cornyn says that the effort to oust McCarthy is disgraceful. We saw a similar thing happen with Boehner, Ryan, and now McCarthy. I'm sure the next speaker is going to be subject to the same terrorist attacks. Terrorist attacks. So here is senators, a Republican senator from the great state of Texas, that's right, calling Republicans terrorists. Got it? Hear that, Texas? You watching from Texas? Got it. That's what is happening. That's what is happening in your state. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know who are the Republicans who voted with Matt Gaetz, we have a helpful little chart here. Hold on. Let me go ahead and drop it in. Here we go. Andy Biggs, Arizona. Colorado, Ken Buck. Tim Burchett in Tennessee. Eli Crane, Arizona. Matt Gaetz, of course. Bob Good in Virginia. Nancy Mace, South Carolina. Matt Rosendale of Montana. These are the people who voted to oust Kevin McCarthy successfully, and now Kevin McCarthy is the first speaker in American history to lose his speakership. Find yourself somebody who looks at you the way that Ilhan Omar looks at Matt Gaetz when debating ousting Speaker McCarthy. Well, again, we are here for the internet. This is the stuff that the internet is tossing down, the gauntlets that the internet is tossing down. There was some major back and forth on the House floor. We are following the TikTok here from the House. Again, the conferences are going to go meet right now and decide a path forward. We are in uncharted territories at this moment. High drama on the House floor. Some moments of extreme interest.
Around for why we don't have 12 bills, but part of it was a relitigation of the debt limit deal. By the way, there was no promise on the debt limit deal, no conditions on that in January, zero whatsoever. I was in the room for that. So the 12 bills were delayed over what? $100 billion. That's a lot of money. But it's nothing compared to the $2 trillion that I came here to object to when Speaker Pelosi and President Trump pushed that bill through. We've had over 500 amendments. Listen, this is a referendum on this institution. We have tried regular order. Speaker McCarthy has tried regular order. If regular order fails today, if you vacate the Speaker, nobody is going to try it again.
Gentleman's time has expired.
This institution will fail. Please do not vacate the Speaker.
Oh, man. All right. Well, I mean, there were people like Jim Jordan, Thomas Massey. I mean, we're big fans of Thomas Massey, but there were people who were advocating for McCarthy. McCarthy got 210 votes, and that's not enough. Ladies and gentlemen, it was complete and total pandemonium on the House floor. Again, the Republicans didn't allow Matt Gaetz to even speak from the dais. Matt Gaetz was not allowed to speak from the Republican side of the House. They wouldn't give him the microphone. So Matt Gaetz had to go over to the Democrat side of the House to speak, which is why you see Ilhan Omar behind him licking her lips. This is why. So this is why. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna change the arrangement here, but this is why you have Ilhan Omar behind Matt Gaetz. You wouldn't normally see that. The Democrats, Matt Gaetz had to speak from the Democrat side of the aisle because Republicans wouldn't let him speak. Ladies and gentlemen, high drama. We are without a Speaker of the House. There were some very angry arguments made from the House floor. You may recall that Matt Gaetz got attacked when he was standing against McCarthy's speakership in the beginning of the speaker's race back in January. Matt Gaetz was effectively attacked by a member of Team McCarthy. So who knows what's going to happen next? Matt Gaetz, I would probably assume that Matt Gaetz is going to be kicked out of the Republican conference. That's what I would assume, effectively. Are we loading that clip, Royce? Okay. This was what happened last time that Matt Gaetz challenged Speaker McCarthy. You will recall that a member of McCarthy's team physically attacked Matt Gaetz in the well of the House, and Kevin McCarthy had to go back and break it up. So who knows what's going to happen next? Newt Gingrich is up with an op-ed saying that Matt Gaetz needs to be kicked out of the Republican conference. That they're going to vote to kick Matt out. We'll see, ladies and gentlemen. We also know that Matt Gaetz is planning on running for governor of Florida. That I have on very, very good authority. Very high authority. The highest authority, I guess, in that story. Matt Gaetz is going to run for the governorship of Florida. That was reelected in 2022, 4-year term. 2026 is when we're going to get a gubernatorial race here in the state of Florida. Is Matt Gaetz preparing for that by saying that he is now a fighter of the swamp? Well, he certainly is getting fought in the swamp with a man trying to legitimately wring his neck. So who knows what will happen to Matt Gaetz next? Watch. Ladies and gentlemen, that was that was Mike Rogers, right? Mike Rogers? Mike Rogers, I believe, a McCarthy backer who had to be physically restrained. Had to have his toupee grabbed to stop him from physically pummeling Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert, who was sitting next to him, standing against McCarthy's speakership. I thought that this was really fascinating. This is a man named Justin Amash. Maybe you recall Justin Amash, libertarian. He was a congressman from Michigan, veteran, and I think a decent dude. I think he's like anti-Trump, but he spent plenty of time in Congress. He is no longer in Congress. Justin Amash is no longer in Congress. Yeah, he was a member of Congress through 2021. And he says this about Kevin McCarthy that I thought was really compelling. Again, he's not in Congress. So he doesn't necessarily have a dog in this fight. It's not like anyone's paying him to say this. Listen to this. Kevin McCarthy was by far the worst leader I served with, the Republican conference. Unprincipled, incompetent, duplicitous, vindictive, and entirely transactional. Instead of simply committing to and following through on maintaining an open and deliberative process in the House, he promised conservatives substantive victories he knew he'd never deliver. All he cared about was getting the gavel. As I've said before, the House needs to follow its rules and allow genuine participation of every representative. This means starting early on major legislation and working through it in committees and on the floor. Any speaker who doesn't run the House this way is perpetuating oligarchy, dysfunction, and hyperpartisanship. Is that what it feels like? It certainly has felt like that to me. As I watch our debt spiral out of control, and now, of course, the servicing of the interest on our debt is more than we spend on national defense. What? Somebody explain that to me. Biden can just drain the Strategic Petroleum Reserve? Billions for Ukraine, nothing for our border? Nobody, de-dollarization around the world? Nobody is doing anything in Washington. Dianne Feinstein had her staffers voting for her. Old, decrepit bat was terminally ill, and instead of being with her grandkids or her family, she had her staffers in there voting for her. Nobody says anything about that? Nobody says anything about McConnell staring. Leader McConnell, hey, are you there? Hey, anyone home? McFly, and McConnell's just like, nothing? No one says anything? We are going to reach a breaking point, right? The laws of gravity apply to us, too. There's going to come a point where the dollar is worthless. There's going to come a point where we can't even defend our own shores. There is a point. Reality always hits, and it hits the hardest. Justin Amash, I think, is very, very interesting in delivering this. However, I will state that there's never been maybe Newt Gingrich was the last good Republican speaker. John Boehner, cuck, sellout, Barack Obama, weeped with Barack Obama. Literally cut videos with Barack Obama. Crying together in a movie theater. See if you can get that. See if you can get that, ALX. Paul Ryan. Remember Paul Ryan? Literally backstabbed and sabotaged Donald Trump at every turn. Paul Ryan ensuring that we didn't build the wall. Guaranteeing that we didn't build the wall. Guaranteeing that there would be no investigations into Hillary Clinton in the House. We had super majorities in the House. We had unified control of the government, and we had nothing. Nothing. At some point, there is going to reach a breaking moment where Republicans in Washington, D.C. there's a fever right now, and it's going to break. And Republicans are going to have to do what the Republican voters want them to do. Like why we send them to Washington. Same thing for the Democrat Party. Again, they're utterly and totally controlled. Talk about terrorists. They're totally controlled by the terrorist wing of their party and by these demonic special interests. But at the very least, they're presenting, albeit a satanic vision for America, a vision for America. What is McCarthy doing? Matt Gaetz is openly saying that it is Kevin McCarthy himself, naming Kevin McCarthy as the man who is keeping the subpoena of Hunter Biden out of the capacity for Congress to subpoena Hunter Biden. Probably a better way to say that. Kevin McCarthy is not allowing Jim Jordan. He is not allowing oversight to bring in Hunter Biden. Now, you may recall that Don Jr., Eric Trump, all the Trump kids were brought in and harassed. day and night by Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats, yet Kevin McCarthy will not allow for the Biden family to be brought in. Well, why the hell is that? What's going on? Matt Gaetz also stating that Kevin McCarthy made a ton of promises to the Freedom Caucus to get them to finally vote for him, and he has not followed through on those promises, and this is why they instituted a motion to vacate as a threat. I just don't think that McCarthy thought that they were going to go through with it. But they went through with it. And here's what we have, ladies and gentlemen. Matt Gaetz, I believe this is Matt Gaetz, on the subpoena of Hunter Biden, saying we have not subpoenaed Hunter Biden yet. What does that say about where Kevin McCarthy's allegiances are?
The problem with my friend from Ohio's argument is that many of the bills he referenced as having passed are not law. We are on a fast track to an omnibus bill, and it is difficult to champion oversight when House Republicans haven't even sent a subpoena to Hunter Biden. So it's hard to make the argument that oversight is the reason to continue when it sort of looks like failure theater. I yield such time as he may consume to my colleague from Arizona.
Failure theater is what Matt Gaetz calls it. Failure theater. So, what do you think? What do you think? There are some arguments in favor of Kevin McCarthy that were issued from the well of the House. I'll say this. Molly Hemingway, who I follow, I like her a lot. She said Kevin McCarthy is the same as John Boehner, the same as Paul Ryan. Again, get me that John Boehner weeping with Barack Obama, them cutting ads together. I want you to see that. I want you to know, like, what your leadership has done, what your Republican leadership has done. Also, Paul Ryan cut an ad where he said he's going to build the wall with Donald Trump. So, where is it exactly? You let the Democrat minority stop you from building a wall? Like, how? How? Unless Paul Ryan was bought off by the Chamber of Commerce that wants cheap, dispensable, illegal foreign labor in this country. Which is exactly what happened, actually. Paul Ryan lied. John Boehner lied. These people cut deals behind your backs with Democrats, and they used you. And Kevin McCarthy is paying for their crimes right now. Kevin McCarthy is paying for it. So this is a moment. Matt Gaetz is saying this is the moment the fever breaks. We'll see, ladies and gentlemen. We shall see. Matt Gaetz making his arguments from the well of the House floor, one of the most compelling ones and one of the most filled with verve Matt Gaetz moments in his successful bid to oust McCarthy. Watch.
Focused on our mission of delivering common sense wins for the American people. We've shown Americans what success looks like when we come together as a team. Now it's time for us to stand together stronger than ever so we can get back to the work our majority was elected to do. I'm proud to support the Speaker as we continue championing conservative priorities that will put our country on a better path. Thank you, Speaker McCarthy.
Gentleman from Florida.
I yield back.
The opening line of my colleague's speech was that Speaker McCarthy always overperforms expectations, but after tweeting "Bring it," and after engaging in profane-laced tirades at House conference, he just lost a motion to table. So I wouldn't necessarily consider that overperforming expectations. And time and again, I've heard my colleagues say that, well, he deserves it because he went through a tough speaker contest. Let me let everyone know he prevailed in that speaker contest because he made an agreement to fulfill certain commitments to make this an open and honest process, and he has failed to meet those commitments, and that's why we are here. I reserve.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Cole.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I yield 3 minutes to my very good friend, Mr. Jordan of Ohio.
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. And then you heard the defense of Matt Gaetz against Jim Jordan of Ohio saying, hey, why haven't you subpoenaed Hunter Biden then? Every time you woke up, there was a new notification that Don Jr. has been dragged in by Adam Schiff for another 9-hour testimony. To get into a 9-hour trap trap that was set in order to harm the Trump family, deliberately harm and attack the Trump family. So, I mean, he's right. He's right to ask that. And Matt Gaetz' cover image here is him, effectively yelling at Kevin McCarthy here. So, yeah, they're not friends. Some of my wonderful conservative friends won't be voting to vacate McCarthy. They worry that it might disrupt legislative business. I would remind them that the full scope of legislative work on the floor yesterday was renaming 2 post offices. Here's what DC Drano says. Vacating McCarthy, my analysis, I stand with Rep. Gaetz. McCarthy agreed to rules when he was voted in as Speaker that he's not following. Now he gets punished. Simple as that. Gaetz and others don't hold him accountable. Kevin McCarthy will continue to steamroll Republican voters with uniparty concessions. The major concession that they're talking about here is that there was a secret deal with Joe Biden. A secret deal to include Ukraine funding in the next continuing resolution. Again, the continuing resolution is effectively just the continuation of Joe Biden's spending. So it's just Republican Congress rubber stamping Joe Biden's spending. That's it. Along with Ukraine funding and zero for a border wall. Yes, I'd prefer to continue investigating the Biden crime family and fight for a unified front against Democrats, but at a certain point, we have to put our foot down and say enough is enough. That time is now. Here's what I think will happen. McCarthy will be vacated as Speaker's position. Is there an heir apparent? No. I expect McCarthy to be voted back in as Speaker after extensive public humiliation exercise, only after more concessions are made to Gaetz and crew. And this is why we should all support Gaetz right now. Democracy is ugly, messy, and uncertain, but real change can only happen when courageous patriots take a firm stand. Gaetz and crew are patriots taking that stand and returning even more power back to the people. And it's hard to argue that that's not what's actually happening right now. I mean, frankly, do you think John Boehner and Kevin McCarthy represent you? Like, are you in favor of the guy? John Boehner was elected. John Boehner was put in charge of Republicans in the House, got the gavel, got a huge majority. I think we won like 50 seats in 2010. The Red Wave, the Tea Party. Were you part of the Tea Party? I sure as hell was. So John Boehner takes all of the energy of the Tea Party and in order to fight Barack Obama, fight Obamacare, fight Obama's spending, fight Obama's sick ideology that we are now seeing the very dark, twisted fruits of across America. John Boehner, upon leaving office, she has a right to do, you can retire. John Boehner, upon retiring, in the final stroke of his retire, released this video after being sent to Washington, D.C. with a clear mandate, given the gavel, in order to fight Barack Obama. Here is what John Boehner delivered as his final message in office.
Can we get together? Now that is a great move. Yeah, it's just me. It's just me. So, you got any advice for me?
So now you want my advice? First, stop sending me all these LinkedIn requests. And second, here's the beauty of this whole thing. You've got all the time in the world to figure this out. You can just be you for a
while. So, great. Good job. Good job, everyone. Are you sick of being lied to? Are you sick of being lied to? We'll see if we can't hunt down, when Paul Ryan was Speaker, Donald Trump gets elected. We'll see if we can't hunt down this video of Paul Ryan riding a horse. I'll never forget it. Riding a horse along the southern border. Paul Ryan saying, I will build the wall. I'm with you. Stand with me. Send me donations. I will build the wall with Donald Trump. Did Paul Ryan ever pass a single bill to build the wall? Did Paul Ryan do anything to ever build the wall? Or was he too busy in the theater with Barack Obama, wiping his tears and licking his toes? Despicable. Truly, your leaders have sold you out. They are so excited. It's a regular thing that is said in Washington, D.C., and I know because I lived there for 15 years. You get to Washington, D.C. as a Republican saying you're going to fight the swamp, and then you get to the swamp and you realize it's more like a jacuzzi. Swamp feels kind of nice. Suddenly my bank account starts to look a little bigger. Suddenly the money starts to be a little looser. And everything is looser in Washington, D.C. The women, the drugs, the booze. There's a party every night. I'm starting to feel really important with my little pin on. You realize the swamp is a jacuzzi and you like being a swamp monster. And that's how someone like Dianne Feinstein, who was born penniless to not a rich family, is leaving her family $107 million worth of mansions in 5 different states and a $62 million private jet, along with a personal fortune of untold hundreds of millions. How does that happen? She's been a senator since 1991. How did that happen? Joe Biden's been in office since the 1970s. I mean, my God. 1991, Dianne Feinstein's a spring chicken in a relation. I'm sick of the way that this city is working. I have a dear friend. His name's Stephen Miller. He was the best. I would argue the best Trump employee at the White House. Stephen Miller wrote all of Trump's best speeches, came up with Trump's border policy, and came up with the Trump policies that actually stuck, that worked. Stephen Miller is a very intelligent individual. Stephen Miller is up on Twitter saying, you know what, guys? There's a major problem here. The major problem here is that Republicans have not created a priority vector. Here we go. I gotcha. Right here. That says, hey, this invasion on our southern border, that's like really important. And we're not going to do anything. We're not going to fund anything until we solve the invasion on our southern border. There's a reason why Congress is Article 1 and the executive is Article 2. Congress is more important than the president. Congress should be able to trample Joe Biden. Should be able to absolutely clobber Joe Biden. But that's not the way it works. Not inside of a neutered Congress or our neutered political system now that has been inverted, where the president can run everything via fiat, an executive order. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Miller saying it's pretty simple, the path forward for Republicans right now. You're going to make the border the number one issue in America, and you're going to make spending the number 1.A issue in America, and that's it. And everyone's going to cut their teeth on those two issues, and we're going to just stop funding other countries and start putting money here. This is what the American people are screaming out for, and I guarantee you, Republican Party, like, you will bring in voters that you never thought you could ever reach by simply stating that. Why don't you go to urban areas? Go talk to urban areas. Like, there was a black fraternity that was here in Tampa. They were having their big national convention, and we were out there talking with them, and every person, to the letter, while they might have considered themselves Democrats or Biden voters, every one of them was like, I don't understand what's going on in Ukraine. Why the hell are we spending money in Ukraine? Like, I go home to I go home to some hellhole. I go home to a city and a place that is getting worse, not better. But we're spending all of our money in Ukraine. It's amazing. It's amazing what happens when you actually message correctly on these issues. Here's what Stephen Miller has.
A lot of issues to discuss with you this morning. I want to get to the border. It's all connected to this spending bill. Your thoughts on averting the government shutdown and Kevin McCarthy's leadership here?
Well, I, for one, am not celebrating the fact that we have extended government funding without making any change at all in the direction of this corrupt government. I understand how we got to this point, but the tragedy is this. We have watched for the last 2 or 3 days as everybody has been in a state of absolute panic, upheaval, outrage at the mere possibility that there could be a temporary lapse in government funding as it happened dozens of times before. I have not seen the same level of outrage or panic or upheaval or emotion over the fact that we've had an invasion on our border for 3 straight years. Washington is up in arms over the prospect of a slight disturbance in their lives and their schedules, but the destruction of our country, except for but a handful of members, barely elicits any response at all.
Ladies and gentlemen, you will see here this book called Young Guns, a new generation of conservative leaders. Every one of these men pictured here have now been utterly disgraced and been proven frauds. Every one of them. Eric Cantor, he's the man in the middle, he lost his primary because he didn't listen to his constituency. And he was just in Virginia. It wasn't even hard to go home to Virginia and listen to his voters. Kevin McCarthy is now the first Speaker of the House to have lost his Speaker's gavel via a vote that was backed by his own party, by 8 members of his own party. And Paul Ryan is somebody who lied to you, and I can prove it. We have gone back into the annals of X, formerly known as Twitter, artist formerly known as Twitter.com, and found Paul Ryan's lie to you. I'm going to play you something. It's going to make your blood boil. I hope you're sitting down. I hope you have your heart medication pills. Your, I don't know, whatever you take to calm yourself down. I hope you have it. Bottle of scotch. Stress ball. Maybe clutching your own Speaker's gavel. Because when Paul Ryan clutched the Speaker's gavel and had a huge majority in the House, could do whatever he wanted, Paul Ryan decided to cut this video. Please watch.
I had the opportunity to travel down to Texas, to go to the Rio Grande Valley and spend time with our Border Patrol. When you see what they're up against, it really gives you even greater respect for what they do. They clearly need more tools and more support to do their jobs effectively. That's why we're going to get this done this week.
Let me ask you something. Did it seem like they got it done? Did you see when Paul Ryan was Speaker for a couple years during Donald Trump's presidency? Did you ever see Paul Ryan pass funding for the wall? You know what Trump was asking? We can probably find the old articles. Trump was asking $5 billion to build the wall. I don't remember that. Now, it's my job. This is what I do for a living. And I just can't remember Paul Ryan once lifting a finger to get a single penny for the border wall. Donald Trump had to ultimately redirect funding from the Defense Department to build whatever pieces of wall that he was going to get. When we had unified control of government, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell colluded in order to kneecap Donald Trump, in order to kneecap you, in order to hurt you, and to allow for the open invasion of our nation, which is exactly what's happening now. You can see like anytime you open up social media. Do we have something, Royce? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, every time you open up social media, you see a new army of people coming in. In fact, we have some people who actually planted a Venezuelan flag on Texas soil. Let's grab that clip too. Just in case you're wondering, if you've been lied to, the reason why our Republican leaders want open borders is because our Republican leaders, Paul Ryan, this was from us. This was just us, like down at the border just the other day. Oh, okay, great. They're just dozens of people. You've seen millions of clips like this. Our Republican leaders betrayed us. It wasn't Democrats. It was our Republican leaders. Give me the Venezuelan flag getting planted. We got that. I know we got that. Why? Because the Chamber of Commerce wants cheap labor. Because there are Republicans like Paul Ryan who lied to you, said he was going to build the wall, never once put up a bill that would build the wall or fund the wall. Let a teeny fraction of Democrats run by sociopath Nancy Pelosi run everything. And now here's what we get. You know, Paul Ryan could have passed comprehensive immigration reform. They could have gotten rid of birthright citizenship. They could have passed a immigration reform bill that effectively makes sanctuary cities illegal. How is it even possible that sanctuary cities exist? I mean, this is the America that we're living in here. This is like this is neo-Confederacy. The Confederacy said, your federal laws don't apply to us. That's how we got the Civil War. Now we have sanctuary cities that say your federal laws don't apply to us. When are Republicans going to start making sanctuary cities, Second Amendment sanctuary cities? Sanctuary cities where our way of life is being persecuted by the federal government. Oh, you can't censor social media here. You can't censor our speech here. Ladies and gentlemen, because Paul Ryan didn't build the wall and because he betrayed you, along with Kevin McCarthy was in leadership, this is now what's happening to our country. They want it to happen. This dirty little secret. They want this to happen. They want the cheap labor. Americans are too expensive. We fight back too hard when we don't like things that are happening. And so they're as complicit as Democrats. Hey, I call balls and strikes. We chop wood on this show. You looking for some type of like hoorah GOP, tattoo stamp on my ass? Bend over for these people? I won't do it. I hate Republicans possibly more than Democrats. I say it often. At least Democrats will stab me in the face. Republicans will stab me in the back. This is what stabbing you in the back looks like. This was planned. They sabotaged Donald Trump. There's only so much the man can learn when he gets into office. They sabotaged him. You didn't build the wall. Donald Trump hit on the key issue that Americans cared the very most about, which was illegal immigration. Build the wall. Inarguably his most famous line in 2016. This side of lock her up. Paul Ryan had no investigations into Hillary Clinton. It would have been really hard for Donald Trump to appoint a special counsel, to be quite honest with you. They would have called that obstruction of justice. Like it really does stand to the Attorney General to appoint special counsels. Paul Ryan could have investigated Hillary Clinton. Didn't do it. Paul Ryan and Kevin McCarthy, one of his deputies, one of his little generals, could have funded the border wall. We've spent $120 billion in Ukraine. They were asking for $5 billion to build our border wall. And nothing. And now, when was the last time you heard them talking about funding a border wall? When was the last time you heard somebody throw down the gauntlet and say, we're not going to pass any budget until we get concessions from Joe Biden? We are Article 1, you're Article 2 of the Constitution. Joe Biden and the Democrat Party are going to bend for us, not the other way around. You've been lied to. You've been lied to. So it is quite interesting to see. I believe that people are sick of politics as usual. It's always a risky move. We'll see what happens, ladies and gentlemen. It's always a risky move when you pull political maneuvers like this. But people are on the side. People are on the side of common sense, and they are on the side of being against Washington, D.C. People know there's something deeply wrong, deeply demonic about that city. Here are some commentary from the Capitol steps. Apparently, Democrats don't know what the hell to do either now in Washington. Ladies and gentlemen, this breaking right after the vote.
We need is for Republicans to stop talking about open borders.
When you see the CBP officers releasing migrants en masse on the street, do you think that sends a message to people that the border's open?
The border is not open. What you see is different than what happens in actuality.
The border is not open? I mean, contrast that with the images on our screen right now, Lieutenant. Another Democrat there, it's Republicans' fault. They need to stop talking about open borders. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, what you see is different than what is actually happening.
Yeah. They need to stop talking about open borders. What does that tell you? It tells you that it's a layup. That's all you have to do is have these conversations with the American people. Elon Musk is down there going live. Ladies and gentlemen, again, Kevin McCarthy has been removed from his speakership seat. Kevin McCarthy is no longer Speaker of the House. Kevin McCarthy may well become Speaker of the House, yet he could potentially run again. You could also nominate Donald Trump. How about that? I nominate Trump as the new House Speaker. Would you want to see it? Would you like to see it? You want to see this? Nancy Pelosi and everyone have to stare at this, dancing away up in the Speaker's chair with the gavel. There is nothing stopping them from nominating Donald Trump as Speaker of the House. You know, if Donald Trump was nominated as Speaker of the House, he'd get, all types of immunity. I don't know. Very interesting. Very interesting proposal. He'd get, he already has Secret Service, but he'd get all his protection, and I don't know. What could you do? What could you do as Speaker of the House? He's the second in line, third in line for the presidency, right after the Vice President. What could you do? I don't know. What do you think? I think that the energy is on our side. I think this will be good. I think that we have the potential for this to turn into something very, very good, because the country right now is beginning to see Washington, D.C. for what it truly is, the oligarchs. The oligarchs who have colluded against you, me, and the voters to sell the country out. And maybe it's for the best that this is happening. There's always risk in kicking over the status quo and in fighting back. There is inherent risk. But, ladies and gentlemen, I think that there is true value in speaking out against a broken system. The truth of speaking out will set you free. Matt Gaetz today spoke out against a broken system and did so in a way that I think is going to resonate bigly around the nation. Again, it's worth repeating his best moment on the House floor when he was booed by his Republican colleagues saying, I don't care. I'm not going to grovel for money.
And when it comes to how those raise money, I take no lecture on asking patriotic Americans to weigh in and contribute to this fight from those who would grovel and bend knee for the lobbyists and special interests who own our leadership, who have, boo all you want, who have hollowed out this town and have borrowed against the future of our future generations. I'll be happy to fund my political operation through the work of hardworking Americans, $10 and $20 and $30 at a time, and you all keep showing up at the lobbyist fundraisers and see how that goes for you. I reserve.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Matt Gaetz flames on, saying that he was lied to, that Republicans have been lied to, and that we are not going to allow it any longer. I will say that this should have gotten more play. This moment. Because this is a moment in American history that we should all remember. Where there was a conquest of our nation. Paul Ryan, John Boehner, Kevin McCarthy allowed for this. This is American soil with a giant Venezuelan flag planted in it. This, ladies and gentlemen, is conquest. That's what Kevin McCarthy, Paul Ryan, John Boehner, Eric Cantor, the young guns have represented. Not your interest. Not your interests, but their special interests. They are more aligned with the Venezuelans who wish to plant their flags on our soil. By the way, these are supposed to be migrants that are fleeing persecution. If they're fleeing persecution, why are they planting their flags on our soil? Why are they doing it? It's a great question, ladies and gentlemen. We are gearing up to see the likes of something I don't think anyone could ever be prepared for. We need to be sober, we need to be thoughtful, and we need to be clear-eyed about what's going on here in our nation. There was a segment that played earlier today on Fox News where New Yorkers were asked about Joe Biden versus Trump and what their lives were like under both. And I think that is ultimately the question. Donald Trump represents a populism, an America First populism, that ended up in real-world better lives for people. Better prices of groceries, better prices of gas, better prices for homes. Inflation, of course, is designed to make you poor. It is the most universal of all taxes. It is a tax without having to pass a tax, because passing taxes are unpopular. Ever since the time of Christ, taxes were unpopular. Taxes have always been unpopular. Robin Hood. Whole story built on how unpopular taxes are. Donald Trump, when he was president, there was a feeling, there was a understanding that people were getting richer, that the middle class was booming, that wages were actually going up for the first time in a very long time. They can't have that. The Marxists who run our government must have a binary. There needs to be victims and victimizers. There needs to be oppressed and oppressors. When you have a big middle class, well, you end up breaking that binary. You just have happy people in the middle that are like, no, I've been liberated by my government that protects my money and my property and the value of both those things. And I'm generally just kind of left alone. They can't have that. Inflation is how they actually kill capitalism. Vladimir Lenin said, how do you destroy capitalism? How do you destroy the capitalist? You grind them between the millstones of high inflation and taxation. That is what we are seeing right now. It is item A, section 1 of Das Kapital, ladies and gentlemen. Will the American people allow for it? I think not. I think the chains are going to be broken. I think the system is going to collapse. I think that we are looking at a house of cards. And that's why they've resorted from soft power to strong to hard power. And they're locking up their political enemies. Never a great sign when you start locking up your political enemies. People are sick of it. Watch.
Or Donald Trump? Because
Donald Trump, you don't even have to finish. I can tell you that real quick.
Why Donald Trump?
Because I know that he loves our country, and I know that he is a godly man.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, sir, what about you? Who are you leaning toward in this next election?
Donald Trump, baby.
Why?
He's got a report card. He talks from the heart, and the people know his true self. He's not a phony. He's for the people.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Ma'am, what do you think about the prosecution of Donald Trump? Yesterday, during his press conference, he said that it's election interference.
I think it's completely election interference. As a lawyer, I'm petrified that I'm watching judges and prosecutors behave this way to individual Americans. And the other point about these polls, the 67% that's not enthusiastic is a whole bunch of Trump supporters who are lying to pollsters.
Wow.
Whereas Biden is totally, those are his numbers.
Thank you so much. Ma'am, what is going on with Joe Biden? It seems like there's a lack of enthusiasm with him, with his own party. Why is that?
Well, things keep coming out now that he's done, and doesn't sound very good for him. And I don't think anybody's very proud of him, shaking hands with the air and not knowing his way off a stage and kind of putting us to shame in front of the rest of the world. So I don't think if I was had been his supporter, I'd be very pleased with what's going on. I think that's what's happening with the Democrats.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think I got time for one more. All right, ma'am, I'm going to come back here to you. So who's your candidate in this race?
Donald Trump.
Why?
Why? Because when he was president, I felt like my life was better. I felt safer. Our bank account was doing better than it is right now, and we don't have all these immigrants that are clogging up our schools and making the streets not safe.
Life was just better.
Life was just better.
Just that simple.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to state that there are 8 very brave members of Congress. Now, we'll see how this plays out. You never know in these kind of gambits. I got a lot of people texting me saying this is a bad idea. I think there needs to be a shock to the system. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it, ladies and gentlemen. 8 members who voted to oust Speaker McCarthy. You should know them. Perhaps one of them is one of your members of Congress. Let's go ahead down to the photo here. Here are the 8 members of Congress. Now, this one shocks me, Nancy Mace. Totally shocks me, Nancy Mace. You have Rosendale in there, Biggs, Eli Crane. Let's make sure that we name them all correctly. Andy Biggs, Eli Crane, Ken Buck, Tim Burchett, Bob Good, Nancy Mace, and Matt Rosendale. So stand up and be proud. Colorado, Arizona, South Carolina, Montana, Virginia, and Tennessee. Along with Florida, of course. Matt Gaetz from Florida. So this is also a lie here. Far-right members of the party. Nancy Mace is not, I think, a far-right member of the party. And is considered by many to be somewhat of a moderate from South Carolina and a semi-liberal area of South Carolina. Mace stunned her colleagues by voting to boot McCarthy from leadership and likely sealed his fate. In a session full of drama, 8 joined forces with the entire Democrat conference. The move effectively removed McCarthy from power and plunged the chamber into turmoil. McCarthy, 58, is the first speaker to be ousted, kicked out, and his gavel taken away by his fellow members. Patrick McHenry of North Carolina, chair of the Financial Services, a close ally of McCarthy, will now serve as Speaker pro tem, meaning he will serve as Speaker until the House can decide on someone else. Burchett told reporters there are plenty of people who do the job better than McCarthy, and he said he wanted a Speaker who didn't cave on the job so badly. He said last week he had a conversation with McCarthy. The last thing I really wanted was to be Speaker. Gaetz said on Monday that he'd like to see Majority Leader Steve Scalise, who is battling blood cancer, in the role. Yikes. I don't know. Blood cancer is a tough one, man. It's a tough one. The humiliating end for McCarthy sent shockwaves across Capitol Hill, securing his title as the shortest-serving Speaker since 1875, following the roller coaster tenure of 9 months. Matt Gaetz led the rebellion, along with a small group of hardline Republicans who viewed McCarthy as a weak conservative. Wrong. Gotta fact-check these people in real time. Who were lied to by Kevin McCarthy about how he would do the budgetary process and fund Ukraine, among other things. Also, not subpoenaing Hunter Biden. McCarthy was seen shaking hands and hugging his supporters on the House floor. Stinging loss. His name could be put up for Speaker again in subsequent battles. The GOP leader's tenure came crashing down 9 months after he was elected after an unprecedented 15 rounds of votes. And we played you that, ending, of course, in Matt Gaetz almost getting punched on the House floor. I don't think voting against Kevin McCarthy is chaos. I think $33 trillion in debt is chaos. And I think facing $2.2 trillion annual deficit is chaos. Matt Gaetz saying, let's get on with it, vacate the chair, and let's get a better speaker. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. It's happened. It's here. It's real. Ladies and gentlemen, I suppose you deserve to know 2 quick things. One, that Ilhan Omar has it in for Matt Gaetz, man. She's on her 4th or 5th husband. I think she's already got a white dude as a husband right now. Not a member of her family, which is a big positive, big step up. Here's how Ilhan Omar looking at Matt Gaetz while Matt Gaetz is giving speeches from the Democrat side of the aisle.
This bill are a series of minibuses that lump these disparate things together. The American people want all of us to take.
So licking her lips, baby, licking her lips. 2. Matt Gaetz is poised. Matt Gaetz delivered an absolutely spectacular breakdown of what just happened on the steps of the Capitol. We started the show off the top with it, but we have a ton more viewers now on this, and we want to thank you, of course, for watching. You should hear directly from Matt. We will effort to have Matt on the program as soon as possible, and to get members of Congress. We had Marjorie Taylor Greene on yesterday to get members of Congress to come on and chat with us about where we're going next. Speaker McCarthy may yet become Speaker again. I guess we can't say Speaker McCarthy anymore. Kevin McCarthy. But ladies and gentlemen, I want you to walk away with this. What's happening in D.C. doesn't work. The way that our government has functioned doesn't work. Watching Mitch McConnell hug Joe Biden. Do you have that photo? I want that up. Grabbing that photo real fast. Watching Mitch McConnell just hug Joe Biden. Joe Biden is the least popular president in American history. Watching these old, decrepit fossils decaying before our very eyes. Dianne Feinstein, getting voted for. People were raising their hands and voting for her. Her staffers. Dianne Feinstein leaving hundreds of millions of dollars to her family. How? It's sick. It's a big joke, and you're not in on the joke. It's a big club, and you're not in it. And these people are selling out our nation for other nations. These people don't view themselves as Americans, our ruling class elites. They view themselves as rulers of the world who will happily sell you out for a Ukrainian border, sell your border out for a Ukrainian border. Your life deserves to be miserable, they think, because quite frankly, they view themselves as global leaders, not as American leaders. And it's time to change that paradigm. And the only way to change it is to practice hard power on people like this. Mitch McConnell shaking hands with Joe Biden. Look at that. Standing together on stage, embracing each other. This is an image of failure. Two men who have the combined age of 160 years old, both in their 80s, both of them senile, both of them incontinent. They have to wear diapers. They can barely breathe, or move, walk, or talk. Shaking hands with absolutely no vision of what to do in the future. They will not be here. I'm not wishing ill on them, but they will not be here in 10 years. They will not have to suffer the consequences of their actions today. They are leaving us a much worse nation. And Matt Gaetz, if anything, I think Matt Gaetz and I are close in age. I'm not sure exactly how old Matt Gaetz is. I think he's in his late 30s, maybe he's 40. Matt Gaetz, at the very least, he just got married, has something to fight for. And is left with something to fight for, has a little bit of time to fight for it. And so maybe it's time for us to pass term limits, for us to pass a balanced budget amendment, for us to get rid of the Federal Reserve. Perhaps it's time for us to put age limits on Congress, term limits and age limits. Dianne Feinstein staffers voting for her as she is terminally ill. Instead of going and spending time with her grandchildren, she's there furthering Joe Biden's agenda to destroy their lives. Although they'll be fine because they were able to, Dianne Feinstein was paid by China to sell out America, your future and your grandkids' future. I'm not a doomer. I care about this nation a lot. I read the energy. I'm really happy that Matt Gaetz brought this energy today. We'll see how it shakes out. It will be very interesting days ahead. I'll leave you, ladies and gentlemen, with Matt Gaetz explaining what just happened from the Capitol steps, surrounded by an army of reporters. And I'm reading the energy here. I think this is a paradigm shift. There's been a huge energy shift today. And I'm here for it. Ladies and gentlemen, please, Matt Gaetz, take it away.
If not McCarthy, then...
Paralyzed the House of Representatives today. To whose benefit? People have called you a narcissist. People say that is to your benefit alone. Is it to the benefit of you and to Donald Trump?
It's the benefit of this country that we have a better Speaker of the House than Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy couldn't keep his word. He made an agreement in January regarding the way Washington would work, and he violated that agreement. We are $33 trillion in debt. We are facing $2.2 trillion annual deficits. We face a de-dollarization globally that will crush Americans, working class Americans. Kevin McCarthy is a feature of the swamp. He has risen to power by collecting special interest money and redistributing that money in exchange for favors. We are breaking the fever now, and we should elect a speaker who's better.
So if not Kevin McCarthy, then who? Then who?
You said last night that Steve Scalise was a name that you floated to potentially be speaker. Where do things stand right now? If not McCarthy, then who?
Well, the stages of grief, I think, are in progress right now with some of my colleagues. I think there was a stage of denial, and I've certainly experienced a good amount of their anger, and now we appear to be headed toward bargaining. I think the world of Steve Scalise. I think he'd make a phenomenal speaker.
We've got less than 45.
I'm afraid of $33 trillion in debt crushing the working people in my district. I'm afraid of the dollar losing its status as the global reserve currency. If they want to expel me, let me know when they have the vote.
We've got less than 45 days left before we've got less than 45 days left before you have to pass a budget, which is something that you've been wanting to do. Doesn't this just completely paralyze the House? I mean, we could see 15 more rounds.
I don't think we will. I think Kevin McCarthy should take a hint. After 15 ballots to become Speaker, after 8 months of a failed speakership, and after removal in this historic manner, I think we should move on and find somebody else. What's paralyzed the House of Representatives has been the failure of Speaker McCarthy. What paralyzed the House of Representatives was not taking up appropriations bills. We left for a 6-week vacation while the appropriations process hung in the balance. And because I forced these people to take a few votes, you think I'm paralyzing the House of Representatives? I think the House of Representatives has been paralyzed for the last several decades as we've refused to pass a budget and as we've governed by continuing resolution and omnibus bill. So I think that this represents the ripping off of the Band-Aid, and that's what we need to do to get back on track.
How do you pass anything if 200 Republicans, how do you pass anything?
What do you say to your colleagues who argue you don't have another name right now? You don't have someone else who could get 218 votes. What do you tell those colleagues?
Well, I would tell them that for certain, Kevin McCarthy can't get 218 votes, so let's try the next person.
How do you pass something with
pro tem, obviously?
There would have to be a real meeting of the minds there.
Congressman Gaetz, how do you pass something if there's 200 Republicans?
Somebody else has another question.
Are you going to ask for a guarantee from whoever is floated as a candidate for the next speaker for them to actually move the appropriations process along in a speed that satisfies you?
Yes.
Congressman, at this
So
point,
will you be putting yourself forward for the speakership?
Absolutely not. I have no desire to be Speaker of the
How
House.
do you pass, Congressman, with all due respect, how do you pass something if you don't have 200 Republicans behind you?
I know we've already asked about names, but what about Emmer and others?
I think the world of Tom Emmer. He'd make a great Speaker.
Congressman, have you spoken with Scalise? Have you spoken with Emmer?
I've spoken with him, but I'll probably keep our conversations between us.
Congressman, take the Speaker.
What was going through your head when the vote gavelled down and it was official McCarthy wasn't Speaker?
We got to move to the next step. You know, we are not at the end of this process, okay? At most, we're approaching halftime. We've got to be able to assemble a governing coalition. We have to build from a place of trust. The reason Kevin McCarthy went down today is because nobody trusts Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy has made multiple contradictory promises, and when they all came due, he lost votes of people who maybe don't even ideologically agree with me on everything. Take, for example, my colleague from South Carolina, Ms. Mace. She has different views than I do on a variety of subjects, but what we had in common, Kevin McCarthy lied to all of us.
Congressman, hold on a second. You're saying that nobody trusts Kevin McCarthy, but you're talking about, including yourself, about 7 Republicans compared to about 200 and about, some odd Republicans who actually do trust him. So can you kind of explain that here?
Well, as it turns out, getting 200 Republicans to trust you isn't enough to stay Speaker.
Compared to 7 Republicans.
At this point, have you spoken to former President Trump about this since the ousting? Was he supportive of what you were doing?
I have spoken to President Trump over the last several days. The ousting only occurred several minutes ago, so we haven't spoken during that time.
President Trump, though, put on Truth Social that he didn't think this was a good idea. He didn't want to see Republicans fighting with other Republicans. How do you respond to the former president?
I would say that my conversations with the former president leave me with great confidence that I'm doing the right thing.
Did the former president call you today? Did the former president call you today?
Who are concerned about the future of the conservative agenda in the House GOP?
I would say that the conservative agenda was being paralyzed by Speaker McCarthy. We hadn't even sent a subpoena to Hunter Biden. Our oversight was lackluster. Our spending priorities were misaligned. The top-line budget was going to lead to more inflation, more debt, more challenges. So the best way to advance the conservative agenda is to move forward with a new speaker.
What is the end game?
Are you going to require that any future speaker elected allows the motion to vacate to stay at a one-person threshold?
Yes.
Congressman Gaetz,
Considering that Steve Scalise votes in line with Speaker McCarthy most of the time, why should he want the job after this just happened?
Well, that's a question for him, I guess, not me.
He said he's uninterested. He's already said he's
I haven't heard him say that.
No, he's already.
What has he said to you?
Well, here's what I would say. Here's what I say. I think a lot of members are going to reflect on their thinking after this historic moment. I think anything that people have said before the McCarthy ouster is probably bearing less weight than the way people may be thinking about these questions after the McCarthy ouster.
What is the end game?
Comments about Steve Scalise yesterday and today. Will you yourself nominate Steve Scalise for Speaker of the House?
Maybe. I want to hear from him. I mean, I'm not here to make a judgment on where Mr. Scalise stands with his rehabilitation and recovery. I would give him the deference to be able to decide whether or not he'd like to put himself forward as a candidate, but he'd be the type of person that I could see myself supporting.